This video is going to be a relatively short one. We're talking about rhythm. And your book does a really good job with rhythm. So there's no point in repeating everything. That's why we read a book. But I will just point out some basics. So the book will tell you, for example, that a quarter note equals 2 eighth notes, and that 2 eighth notes equals 1 eighth note, equals 2 16th notes. So it should be obvious that if 2 eighth notes equals a quarter and 1 eighth is 2 16ths, that 1 quarter would equal 4 16th notes. So I just want to make sure we make that connection. The names also make sense, right? A whole note, then you have a half note. That's half of a whole. So then a quarter note, there's 4 of those in a whole note. An eighth note, there's 8 of those in a whole note. A 16th, there's 16 of those in a whole note. The names just make sense. They're all powers of 2, in case you're mathematically inclined. If you're not mathematically inclined, there's still powers of 2, but you can ignore it. So it tells you how many are in a whole note. That's what the names mean. In England, the names are much harder. Quaver, semiquaver, hemi-demi, semiquaver. I just love those names. But in America, our names make a lot of sense. And then if we try to put, if we want to divide a quarter into 3 parts instead of 2, we do simply, we write our 3 eighth notes instead of 2. We put a 3 underneath, and we call it a triplet because there's 3. Or if I want 5 of them, well, you have to write them as 16th notes. You write them as a version smaller than would fit in. So I do 5 of them, and I call it a quintuplet instead of a triplet. Quintuplet because quint means 5. So I can have 5 within 1 or 3 within 1. But mostly we write triplets, and we can divide it any way we want, but we don't bother with something if we're just dividing it into 2 if it's a quarter note or a half note or something like that. And if we have something we want to divide into a 3, but it takes quarter notes or half notes, so there's no flag down here, we put a bracket. That's just a notation thing. It's the same thing. Instead of dividing a half note into 2 quarters, we divide it into 3. Now, by the way, when you're trying to sight read and all this, it's really hard sometimes if we have a slow beat. Where's the half? Where's the half? Right? 1. Well, it's hard to do it with your mouth, but it's easy with your hands. Notice when my hands come out and back in. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Sometimes if you want to divide something up, it's great to do something physical. If you want a triplet, make a circle. 1, 2, 3, or triangle. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and. Use your body, and it's very useful because sometimes it's really hard to hear these subdivisions until you get used to it and practice them a lot. Well, that's basically all there is to rhythm. We just have to learn to see these symbols, the closed-in ones, the open ones, and the beams and the flags. Remember, they're equivalent. So an eighth note has 1 flag or 1 beam. A 16th note has 2 flags or 2 beams. That's it. Now the book has a thing on dots. Dots just take half the value and add it back in. Tie means you connect 2 notes as if they're 1. Add them together. So a dotted half is equal to a half plus a quarter. So I could write a dotted half as dot or tie. And the double dot means I had half, and then I had half of what I added. So a double dotted note, double dotted half, is the half tied to a quarter, tied to an eighth. That's all. No magic. No magic. So again, just practice, and that's all there is. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to be in touch with me.